Hello, this is Victoria Maniscalco of Young Italians of America. Today we are here to celebrate Veterans Day. Today is a very special day for all Americans, especially our veterans. We are all free today because for over 200 years, whenever freedom has been threatened or trodden upon, valiant men and women have answered the call of their country in that time of need. From all branches of the services, they have risked and even gave their lives to protect our beautiful country. Today we are here at Ocean View Cemetery in Staten Island, New York, at their Veterans Memorial.
Foreign wars, we come here and we memorialize those that died through the years. And we use this because, again, it's a cemetery, and Memorial Day that's what it's all about. There's an old saying with veterans: some gave all gave some. And so that's how we work it. History of this. And by the way, all these guys are buried here too. These are all the men from World War One that built the this isn't their grave. And it didn't become World War One until 30 years later when we had World War Two. And then from Korea, Vietnam, I served 2 tours in Vietnam. And now Iraq, Afghanistan. It's like we're never getting out of it. The world is never at peace, which is sad.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah. I represent the Air Force Academy here on Staten Island.
Wow.
There it is. That's the Air Force Academy thing. So there's actually several areas within the military where you go to school and you continue your education and you learn more. So education is very important. In fact, while I was in the military, I received my master's degree and my PhD while I was in the military.
Wow.
And again, I believe in education, so it's almost easy to do it within the service.
And where would you say, or maybe a couple of your favorite places to have served, and why?
Interesting. Vietnam was fascinating because of at the time what I thought we were doing, and we were doing for their freedom and for our survival, for their survival. You know, Vietnam being in the Far East with different cultures, and that was fascinating, definitely. Being on the island of Guam, we were there for 3 years. And the joke of it, Guam is only 20 miles long and 8 miles wide.
Wow.
And there's only one road, they call it Highway 1. And so Guam, interesting enough, which is part of my life now, while on Guam, they asked me to be a sports official. We were so self-contained that we literally had major leagues. The baseball, it was the Marines against the Air Force, against the Navy, against the college students, and all adult. So they called it the Guam Major Leagues.
Wow.
Oldest children started school on Guam.
Really?
So that was fascinating. From Guam, we wound up in Germany, and I was there for 5 years, and one of my daughters was born in Germany. So Kabine Deutsches Kinder. And of course, being in Europe, that's awesome. And to be able to go just jump in your car and go, like we went to Italy for a month. Just so happens while we were stationed in Germany, my wife's father died.
Okay.
And they were living here in Staten Island, so I resigned my commission. Then I was smart enough to join the reserves and fulfill my commitment and be able to stay in my time. So once I got here, I had to find a job.
Yes.
And what's interesting, I had a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD. Couldn't find work. I scared people. People felt I was too qualified or overqualified. So I went into the school system. So I felt I needed to become an administrator because that was a big pay increase.
Yes.
So I went back to school and then I got another master's degree in administration supervision. So now I have a bachelor's, 3 master's degrees, and a doctorate. And again, I wasn't able to do much. It took me 15 years before I got promoted to an administrative position. And then after that, I was able to advance, and eventually I became principal of the high school.
And I am very impressed with all your actions and how you persevered. What type of advice would you give to maybe young veterans of today? What advice would you give?
Well, first of all, the young people, men and women, women are becoming very strong in the military, and they're able to understand, hey, whatever a man can do, they can do. And we have some great female pilots, fighter pilots, and that's a big attraction in the Air Force. But the academies are all available to the people. Instead of joining the military after high school, I went into the monastery.
Really?
I became a Xaverian brother.
Wow.
Like Farrell has Christian brothers.
Yes.
We have Xaverian brothers. In high school, I was very taken by the group. I joined the group. And so I was in the monastery. And as part of that, I wasn't allowed communication with the outside world, per se.
Yes.
My parents were allowed to see me once a year. So while I was in the monastery, to use a better term, and I had no contact with the outside world, I still knew about the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And I'm gung-ho. And one of the questions you asked, one of my heroes from World War II is John Basilone, a very famous Italian.
Okay.
He's the only Marine to earn the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross. And he was a great hero from New York. Well, he was born in Buffalo, but he resided in Raritan, New Jersey. They have a beautiful statue of him there. So he was one of my heroes. So in the monastery, when they did not renew my vows, I figured, let me serve my country. Nobody's going to miss me, God forbid, if I die. So I went to join the Marines. And because I wore glasses, the Marines said, we don't want you. We're looking for infantry guys. We're looking for riflemen. And you lose your glasses, you'll be a casualty already. Get lost. I was heartbroken. And my father, God bless him, who served in World War II, my father said, listen, don't be a grunt like I was in World War II. Go to college, get a degree, and if you still want to serve, at least go in as an officer. Do the right thing. So I was eligible for the draft. Because I was a college student, I didn't have to get drafted. While I was a college student, I got married. So I didn't have to be drafted because now I'm a married man.
Okay.
While I'm in college, we had a baby.
Wow.
So not the typical life. So again, I wasn't drafted. I raised my right hand and said I do. I joined the ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps of the Air Force. And when I graduated college, I became a second lieutenant in the Air Force. Okay? My wife and I and our baby traveled to Texas, which was quite an experience. It's a town called San Angelo. It's outside the Mexican border, near the Mexican border. And being two Brooklyn kids growing up in the big city, it was a culture shock. They come up to me and they said, listen, you're a married man, your wife's pregnant with your second child. We're going to give you Germany or Japan because we can guarantee 3 years in place.
Okay.
And as a family man, you need that stability.
Yes.
And again, I said, I didn't join the military for that. I raised my right hand again and said, I want Vietnam.
Wow.
So I went to Vietnam. Again, I volunteered. My wife wasn't happy about it, but she understood where I was coming from. She came here to Staten Island, stayed with her mom and dad.
Okay.
While I was in Vietnam, I was a flyer. I had got to fly, which was phenomenal. And but every time I took off, I never knew if I was coming back down again. And I never really told my wife what was going on per se, because I didn't want to get her worried or not. But
How was the training process?
Fascinating. Well, it's interesting. Before I got to go to Vietnam, I had to go to not pilot school, but flight training school. And then when I finished that, I had to go to survival school in Washington State. And that was a 2-week experience where they literally threw us into the woods and left us there for 3 days and made us survive in the woods to learn, what it takes to survive not on your own. We did it as a group, but still to have that survival technique. And that wasn't even enough. Before I went to Vietnam, it's proper. I had to go to the Philippines to what they call snake school. It was called jungle survival school. It's interesting, within the survival atmosphere of the military, there's also water survival, there's also Arctic survival, there's jungle survival. So they actually have different survival schools and survival training to go to depending on where you're going to be stationed. So now I'm a second lieutenant, and based on my experience and stuff, you earn medals when you're there, give or take. Okay. But we have you now for a distinguished flying cross. It's the shape of a propeller. Okay. And to give you an example of why I'm so proud of it, Charles Lindbergh was given that when he flew all the way to Europe on his own, the solo flight. Yes. He was awarded with the Distinguished Flying Cross. Second lieutenant, which is unheard of. So here I am, a second lieutenant, earning one of the highest awards that I could earn, and I was humbled by that. I flew in Vietnam. I flew 92 combat missions in Vietnam, and I don't have any wings. And I'm not a pilot, and I'm not a navigator, because those are the only 2 authorized for officers. Okay. But the enlisted man has a crew member wing. Can I wear that? Am I allowed to wear that? And they said, no, you're not enlisted. You're an officer. So I said, then how come we don't have any wings? So I was the first person to earn the non-officer crew member wings.
Okay.
And I was the first one to have it.
I'm
So
glad
then
I
on one
got
hand, it's nice I'm wearing wings now, but then on the other hand, I feel like, oh, well, I have wings, so the DFC means something. But without the wings, it meant more to me.
Exactly.
So it's the little subtle thing.
Yes.
I can give you something heavy. And,
Okay.
you know, you're asking, I think wherever we were, we loved the way we were and what we did, and Germany was a biggie. But I'm serving in Vietnam. Things got so bad because of the drugs. The drugs over there were plentiful, powerful, and kids were alone, away from home.
Yes.
They were bored, they were scared, whatever it was, the drugs were an attraction.
Okay.
So in October of 1970, I found one of our doctors, and we arranged a pneumonia clinic.
Okay.
And we put kids in there for detox. We put
Okay.
kids in there for help. Then in January, I went to at the time where I was, we had a one-star general. And I went to him, and great guy. And I said to him, sir, we have a problem here. We have a drug problem. We need to do something. So we organized a drug council.
Wow.
And I go to my new duty assignment, and the first thing I did is I said, what are we doing about our drug problem? And they said, what drug problem? I said, we have a drug problem. I just left Vietnam. It's hot and heavy, and our kids are coming back.
Wow.
And they're coming back with the problem.
We need to be prepared.
In August of 1971, President Nixon finally admitted that the military had a problem. I became the first drug control officer in the military. In 1972, I became the drug alcohol control officer. Drug alcohol control officer. They admitted that alcohol was an issue, but it was tougher to deal with because of the legalities.
I like that not only do you have the idea to speak up when something's wrong, and you put it into action.
That's right.
I really respect that.
So now I'm serving in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's funny, even a colonel came up to me, a high-ranking officer, and he said, listen, I'm going to retire soon. Where can I go? Where can I live that my children won't be exposed to drugs? And I said, as long as there's people, human beings, there's going to be drugs. You can't get away from it. So it's only up to the person. We can only, hope to, things work out or whatever, however it is. So anyway, I did such a great job in that environment that they shipped me, my wife and I, and my children to Anderson Air Force Base, Guam.
Okay.
Because not only was Guam a hub of drugs, because of the environment, you're islandosis, you're tied in.
Yes.
But Vietnam was still very alive, and drugs were coming out of Vietnam, and the first stop they made was Guam. So my program was social actions. We became social workers in a sense. So that was the name of my office.
Okay.
Social actions. I was the drug alcohol control officer. We had an equal opportunity and treatment officer, and we had a race relations officer. And the three of us made up the program. And we had people working with us and for us to train people, to assist people, to counsel people, to help people at whatever levels we need.
Very nice.
So I literally would go out and do training classes for 5,000 people at a shot, because we had to train everybody, and it was easy to do it in a large audience. Now, I'm the first person from the island of Guam to ever graduate from the University of Oklahoma.
Really?
And it was such a big event that they flew over and had a graduation ceremony for me on
so
Guam.
special.
And it made the Stars and Stripes, the newspaper, the local military newspaper, it was kind of like a big piece of history. And the man who narrated it was a Catholic priest. His name was Father Joe Martin. And he was an alcoholic who recovered on his own, and now he's helping other people recover. He's talking about why people take drugs and why people drink and why people do whatever they do. And he has a whole thing down there. And it got to a point where we would show it and people would say, oh, wow, okay. So I kind of enveloped that and gave it on my own pitch, following his guidance. I'm in Europe, and it's so easy to jump in your car and go. And I keep going, and all of a sudden, in the middle of nowhere, there's this beautiful marble pedestal with a golden eagle on top. And it says, welcome to the American World War II Cemetery,
Wow.
Luxembourg.
You were meant to visit it.
Luxembourg is a little duchy. this
What
in
a-
here.
what
Now,
a
I'm a
fun.
history buff and I'm a career soldier. All right. So I walk into the cemetery and there's this big, massive sign, and it says, "Welcome to one of 23 American cemeteries,
Wow.
World War I and World War II." And they list it.
Okay.
There's 2 in the Pacific, 1 in Hawaii, and 1 in the Philippines, in Manila, where I was.
Okay.
8 World War I, mostly in France, and 13 World War II, mostly in France. Is there anybody whose name I might recognize? You know, I'm a history buff.
Yes.
Well, we have George Patton, General Patton.
Okay.
I said, wait a minute. The guy they made the movie about, Patton, the guy from World War II, the war hero from World War II, he's here? Yeah, come on. And there's a little white cross, like that. And it says George S. Patton, General, California, December 17th, 1945. He says, did you ever hear of Joyce Kilmer? "I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breasts. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree." And that poem, they took, "I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree." They even turned it into a song. Joyce Kilmer graduated from Rutgers University. He was a poet. He joined the military during World War I. He was with the Fighting Irish, with the Fighting 69th, with the Rainbow Division.
Okay.
Father Duffy, that whole big James Cagney. I forgot who played him.
I love James Cagney.
James Cagney was in it, and Pat O'Brien. Pat O'Brien played Father Duffy. And he was killed by, not by one of his men, but one of his men tried to run away. He panicked. And Joyce got up out of the trench and pulled the kid down, and he got shot right in the head by a sniper. And the man told me he literally was buried 500 feet from where he was shot.
Wow.
So I took a picture of his grave. I sent it to the governor of New Jersey to say this is Joyce Kilmer. I sent it to Rutgers University. I sent it to the Turnpike authorities, because there's a Joyce Kilmer rest stop on the Turnpike. Just to say, hey guys, look who your hero is. He's here.
And what did they say?
And nobody responded.
Okay.
I was only the 3rd person to sign the guest book for that year. For that year. And I was saying, so now I look at the book, and the book tells me that General Mark Clark, who was a World War II hero, he rescued Italy. He fought in Italy.
Yes.
And went right up the coast and freed Rome.
Wow.
Mark Clark.
Wow.
So I wrote him and I said, "Sir, I'm a career soldier. I'm a history buff. How come I don't know anything about this? How come we don't know anything about this? We don't know anything about this. How come people aren't here paying respects?" And he said, "First of all, World War I happened so long ago, in a sense, who cares? And World War II, the only ones that really respond are family members." He says, "We have no money. We have no publicity. We have no marketing. We have nothing.
Now with the
Whatever you
internet.
can do, God bless you. We'll be appreciative." There's one right outside Rome. There's one in Florence. And again, how many people go to Italy and literally go to Rome or Florence and don't know that the Americans are buried there?
I'm curious, with your call to service, to serve in the military and also service to God, what do you think propelled you to answer this call? Was it your parents? What do you think propelled you to answer these calls?
Well, my dad served in World War II. Well, everybody did. I mean, World War II was a biggie, you know, and I'm technically a World War II baby. And then Korea, you know, I remember Korea vividly.
Living in that time.
Again, it's our country, you know, right or wrong, our country.
Yes.
And it's a lot of these movies that, you know, that I saw and I took an interest in. Again, gung ho, you know, and this is what we're all about, and the heroes and how they gave up their life. So in a sense, some people say I have a Red Cross personality, but I always want to help. I want to help people.
Yes.
And I'm a giving person. So the one reason I joined the Brothers was to pray for my father, because my father wasn't very religious. And I was told my grandmother thought I was great. That's not a good reason to go. You know, don't go just because of your father. You know, but I enjoyed that life that I saw. But great, you know, my grandmother was very religious. But religion kind of interests me. I thought about priesthood at one time, but I changed my mind after I saw the Brothers. The Brothers are another whole lifestyle that appealed to me. And then again, helping our country and dealing with our country. And when there's a war, I mean, that's the best way to serve. You know, if it rather than sitting back and watching everybody else do it.
Yes.
And that's John Basilone. That happened to him. You know, he became a hero, and they took him home and treated him as a hero, and he felt upset that his buddies were getting killed, or his buddies were still putting their life on the line, and he felt guilty, so guilty that he went back into the war, and of course he was killed, which is sad.
Yes.
And again, I didn't have to join the service. I didn't have to go to Vietnam.
No.
It's like Father Capodanno, which is my hero. You know, he was a priest. He didn't have to go to the military. He didn't have to go to the Marines. He didn't have to go to Vietnam, but he did. You know, in some ways, I don't know if I mirror that, but
Yes.
you know,
People
it's
today,
a whole different.
they need to hear stories like this. What do you think more so young people of today need, maybe to acquire or be more involved with supporting their country and having this sort of pride that you emulate? Because I'm very inspired by you, and I want the young people of today to feel similarly if they are a bit curious. What do you think they need to surround themselves with, or what's some advice that you have?
Interesting. I still got the story I want to give you, and it doesn't have to be a think, but first of all, it's our country. Like, you know, there's a beautiful poem, a story that freedom isn't from the press, it's from the soldier. Whatever isn't from whatever is, you know, in other words, freedom isn't free.
Yes.
We have to earn it.
It's true.
All right, and it's easy to accept it, and it's easy to live it, but you know, you have to be willing to do something for it. On one hand, I think what Israel does is fascinating. Israel has a mandatory service, men and women.
Yes.
And Belgium, where our order, the Zavarian Brothers, were founded, they don't care if you're a priest or a brother, you have to serve for 2 years. It's called common service or
Yes.
whatever. And at one time we spoke of that in the United States, but too many people, you know, didn't want to be bothered, and that's why in many ways, you know, the military had whatever they have. You know, people who joined because they had nowhere else to go, or people who joined because the options weren't that readily available, but whatever. But the military has a lot to offer.
Yes.
And most people look down on the military for the most part. And I can understand, you know, you don't want to go die, but I didn't. You know, in
Look how
that
much
sense, I'm lucky.
you accomplished.
But, you know, the military offers training. It offers, and that's another beautiful thing about the military, the equality that they have. Men and women get the same pay. There's no, you know, questioning or whatever. And I know there's issues, but the same issues in our society.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of concern about the men and the women being together and the women being abused and whatever. But that happens across society, you know. And in the military, in some ways, it's a restricted environment, so it has its own issues.
You're very smart.
But
yes.
but nobody accepts that, and then we're at a point now where we don't overlook it anymore. Back in the day, it was the old, you know, the good boys that are, you know, or look the other way or whatever, and even the church is facing that.
Yes.
So that's something to do away with. But again, you know, you have to be willing to give. Like, you know, when I left the monastery, one of the thoughts was to join the Peace Corps and give back to my country in some form.
Okay.
And that was a thought.
Yes.
And it made me feel like I was still in the monastery thing, because, you know, you're helping others.
Yes.
And you're going to a country.
And you're learning about other cultures while
right?
doing
But also,
and
you
serving
know,
the community.
Right. You know, you're helping people in need and stuff like that. And you aren't jeopardizing yourself, because theoretically you weren't in, you know, getting shot at or fired at. But again, nowadays in our world, you know, Africa's under siege, Haiti, you know, and this is what some of our Zavarian brothers are. We have Zavarian brothers in Haiti, and they're fighting for their life.
Wow.
We have Zavarian brothers in Africa, and you know, and again, they have to live with that. But again, you know, people need to even now in our own community to help each other. You know, we have the homeless, which is sad, and we have veterans that are hurting. And our country doesn't rise to the occasion, but people can help each other.
Absolutely.
It takes a community to raise a child, and that's something we need to learn.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that some cultures do that. You know, us Italians sometimes, you know, we're a little, we're cliquish in a way, but we're also standoffish. We don't really help each other within. You know, like my family, we all grew up on the same block, and my grandfather and grandmother on my dad's side had 12 children. And each one had 6 or 7 kids of their own, and you know, whereas on my mom's side, she only had 3 brothers and sisters, and a few kids and whatever. So, but family was a big thing, but it was our own family.
Yes.
We didn't really say, oh, let's get the whole neighborhood together and help each other.
Yes.
But we took care of our own.
Yes.
And we raised our own. But
that's very important
so
to
much
encourage
do.
the youth and the community to serve others.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Well, right now, here on Staten Island, Susan Wagner High School, Newdorp High School, Curtis High School, Tonville High School, they all have junior ROTC programs. Mm-hmm. And that's a chance for young people
yes.
to get a feel for the military. Learning skills, learning discipline, learning training, learning techniques that would help them in school. And they don't have to do anything with it.
Yes.
It's kind of a cool thing.
Nowadays,
I don't know.
They have the opportunity.
I used to enjoy it. I made fun of it. When I was a brother, I wore a robe. I wore what they call a habit. So I gave up the habit to put on the uniform. And I used to wear the uniform. But it's funny. I would literally wear my uniform from my house to my school because we had drill days and stuff. And people would spit on me. People would accuse me, attack me, accuse me of being a baby killer. They didn't even know that I was just a student, and I was just a cadet. And I hadn't been anywhere per se yet. But they looked at us as bad guys. And which instead of respect or something like that, they're saying, hey, thank you.
That's right.
These things have changed, especially with the Vietnam vets doing what we did to kind of bolster ourselves and
yes.
bring ourselves back up to some decency. The Iraqi and Afghanistan soldiers don't have that distaste that they gave us. World War II vets and Korean vets didn't want anything to do with us because we were a police action. We weren't really a real war. And unlike my dad and people like him in World War II, where thousands went at the same time to go report to duty, I left my house by myself. I came home by myself. I was out there by myself. I wasn't part of a group or an entity or anything like that. It was we showed up, we did what we did,
wow.
and then that was it. Taking notes.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with all of your education. Can you tell me a little bit about how you achieved your doctorate and what was your doctorate in?
Okay, like I said to you, the military supports education. So I got my doctorate through City University of Los Angeles, and again, they came to us in Europe and trained us and whatever, and then I had to do a dissertation. And my degree was in psychology, and because I was involved with drugs and alcohol, and I was the clinical director for 11 different programs, and I believe wholeheartedly in the military and its love of education, because that makes us better people.
Absolutely.
And being an Italian,
yes.
I grew up in
Tell us about that.
My father's side, Maligno, which kind of interesting name, but according to our coat of arms, we were originally from Spain,
okay.
and somehow we landed in Sicily in 1870. What I was told as a kid, right or wrong, is that we were pirates, and Spain got rid of us and sent us to Sicily because it was a penal colony. But according to arms, my parents were given the title of Don, and Don is considered, a very positive thing. My grandfather came here in 1921 with his four oldest children, his son and three daughters, and he and his son were hired by Fred Trump to be construction workers.
Wow.
And because of Trump, he was able to buy 3 houses on 39th Street in Brooklyn.
Look at that.
So he literally put his whole family on 39th Street. And my grandmother came here in 1923, 2 years later, after he got established, and she had 4 more children here in America, and one of them, of course, was my dad. Very close-knit. Being Italian, I was Catholic, and I was raised in the faith. I raised myself in the faith to some extent, but my grandmother was very, very religious.
And she had a big impact on you.
My grandmother, yeah. She was so proud when I became a brother. She was very proud, and so it was an interesting thing. But
let me say, on behalf of Young Italians of America, I'm just so proud to share your story and to have met you, and to even to know you and to learn from you. It is a blessing. And so thank you again. Thank you for your service, and thank you for listening.
Yes,
Thank you for
I
listening.
appreciate it
I have
too.
enough to say.